At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI garbage. And what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it that way. I'm Daniel Pierce, and I'm going to be your narrator. Now, let's get into today's story. The order board sang a symphony of alien script and human shorthand, and Lucia Marigold conducted. Pick up table 9, 1 Cathon gut stew, extra bile sack. On the fly, 2 Terran toast, hold the gluten, add existential dread. HUD. She spoke, her voice a flat, calm instrument in the kitchen's percussive chaos. Stitch, a verdant of interwoven green tendrils, rustled in its nutrient tank, manipulating a dozen utensils with ease as it plated the gut stew. The Perhelion Cafe occupied a cramped, perpetually steamy box of noise and smells in the spin ring station's midsector. Lucia ruled the cafe as her kingdom, and the morning rush served as her sacred duty. The swinging door behind the kitchen and dining area, a constant squeaking interruption, remained the bane of her existence. Percy currently propped it open. Percy, a cube of dark, strangely smooth metal about the size of a ration-pack crate, came from the storage unit Lucia inherited along with the cafe's debts. The absurdly heavy cube, etched with microscopic channels, hummed if you listened closely. She ignored it. She had food to cook. Percy's sole purpose, stopping the damn door from hitting her in the ass every 30 seconds. "Renzo, where are we on those zip-fruit preserves?" Lucia called out, her focus on the sizzling slab of protein on the grill. "Where we are every morning, kid." A gravelly voice grumbled from the front counter, on the verge of a riot. Renzo, a broad-shouldered man who looked carved from station granite and then beaten with it, polished a glass with a worn rag. "New guys here." Lucia glanced through the service window. The new guy, a Serenian, stood by the counter. He was a tall, slender avian whose blue-black plumage held the fixed sheen of a fuel leak on pavement. He held a data slate and cocked his head at an angle that suggested everything he witnessed offended him on a molecular level. He had become their newest, most annoying regular. "What's it today?" Lucia asked. "Mineral suspension and a lecture on the cafe's atmospheric humidity?" "You forgot filtered water and a complaint about the noise," Renzo said. "The kid has you figured out." The Serenian, Dr. Hitchius, tapped a 3-jointed finger on the counter. "Proprietor, I require a sterile beaker for my suspension. The glassware you provided yesterday had trace silicates inconsistent with a Class 4 sanitation protocol." Renzo's smile was a sharp, cold display of teeth. "Sure thing, Doc. I'll get right on that after I decontaminate the airlock." Hitchius's chest of head feathers ruffled, a gesture of agitation he clearly failed to control. He settled onto a stool at the counter's far end, a ring of specialized prehensile feathers around each wrist, fluttering near his wristpad. Lucia turned back to her grill, flipping the protein slab with a sharp snap of her wrist. Let the universe collapse. The lunch rush demanded her attention. A momentary lull descended, a deep breath before the next wave of orders. Lucia stared at the doorstop. She nudged Percy with her steel-toed boot. It held, solid, immovable. She had noticed little oddities around it. Sometimes, the salt shakers on the nearest table would vibrate, their contents forming tiny, perfect cones. Once, a dropped spoon had hovered for a full second before clattering to the floor. She had always blamed it on the springboard's notoriously flaky gravity generators. The old station ran on a mess of competing technologies maintained by stubborn guilds who refused to fund upgrades. The cafe door chimed, admitting a new customer. The usual din of a dozen species chewing, slurping, and negotiating faded to a murmur. Lucia looked up. The figure stood inside the doorway, cloaked and still. An unfamiliar species. The tall, impossibly thin being radiated a profound silence. Its face was a smooth, featureless plane. Renzo's free hand moved below the counter. Lucia knew the heavy-duty plasma pistol he kept there, a silent partner in their business. A heavy silence fell over the cafe. The cloaked figure tilted its head, its focus bypassing the patrons and the food to fix on the kitchen door, specifically on the dense metallic cube propping it open. After a long, stretched-out moment, the figure turned and departed. The cafe's chatter returned, a wave rushing into a vacuum, but the sound was strained and brittle now. Customers cast uneasy glances at each other, their meals less important. Lucia caught Renzo's eye. He gave a short, subtle shake of his head. Later. She nodded, heard. The order board was blinking. Table 4 needed its single-cell protein gruel. The universe, for now, could wait. Dr. Hitchius found the texture of his mineral suspension adequate. His primary purpose on the spin ring was completing his monograph, Fables of Pre-Expansionist Weaponry, a study in galactic myth-making, and the quietest key, the centerpiece of his third chapter, served as a perfect example of folklore masquerading as history, a device that could erase a planet's biosphere? Absurd. A tool for zealots, a ghost story for nervous systems. Yet, the cloaked figure lingered in his thoughts. The way it stood, the focus of its attention. Its form matched anecdotal descriptions of chorus-like alkalites, members of a nomadic theocratic fleet whose entire doctrine rested on a crusade of purification. And they, according to the fables, were sworn seekers who sought the quietest key. The situation had to be a coincidence. Still, procedure demanded diligence. Hitchius discreetly raised his wristpad, a custom-built data tool woven into his harness, and activated its passive spectroscopic scanner. He aimed it at the grubby, unassuming doorstop. He expected readings for a dense iron ferrite alloy, perhaps with some unusual trace elements, standard ballast material. The readings scrolling across his wristpad contradicted each other. The device reported a mass inconsistent with its volume by several orders of magnitude. The cube emitted low-level graviton particles and simultaneously absorbed ambient biological matter. The scanner registered airborne skin cells, microbial spores, and vaporized lipids from the kitchen's grill, all drawing into the cube's surface at a slow but constant rate. Its energy signature produced readings that contradicted known physics. Hitchius's neck plumes flared. One of his 3 hearts hammered against his sternum. This was active technology. This was something else. He ran a cross-reference, feeding the anomalous data into the Serenian Grand Archive via a priority academic link. He searched for devices matching the energy profile, the mass discrepancy, and the biological sampling rates. The archive spun for a fraction of a second before returning a single result. Heavy redactions obscured the entry, locked behind 9 layers of archivist-level security he could just access. The title, however, was accessible. Project Chimera, codename Quiet is Key. Hitch's wrist feathers fluttered so hard they made a soft buzzing sound. He looked from the wristpad to the doorstop. The doorstop, at that moment, passively analyzing the genetic signature of a half-eaten zip fruit. He burst into the kitchen, his usual composure shattered. "You!" He squawked and pointed a trembling feather digit at Lucia. "You barbarian!" Lucia was in the middle of dicing a large purple tuber. She paused, knife held aloft, and gave him a flat, uninterested look. "If you're here to complain about the beaker, the line forms behind my will to live. It's a short line." "Beaker?" Hitchius raised his voice to a frantic pitch. "Do you have any conception of what you are doing? You are using a Class 9 biosphere erasure catalyst to keep a door from swinging shut!" Renzo moved to his side, his large hand clamping down on the Serenian's shoulder. "Doc, lower your voice. What the hell are you talking about?" "That!" Hitchius gestured wildly at Percy. "That's the quietest key! An artifact that can synthesize a biophage tailored to a planet's dominant protein folding sequences! It can trigger cellular collapse and a chain reaction across an entire world!" Lucia blinked. She finished her cut, the knife making a clean thunk against the board. She looked at the cube, then back at Hitchius. "Percy? He's a doorstop." "His name is not Percy!" Hitchius wailed, a sound of academic horror. Lucia shrugged. "It is now." Renzo's grip tightened on Hitchius' shoulder, his expression hardening. The easygoing cynicism vanished, replaced by a grim, familiar weight. "He's telling the truth, isn't he?" he asked, his voice low. Aegeus nodded frantically, his plumes a chaotic mess.
The course, the alkalite, they know it's here. Procedurally speaking, we are all about to become a historical footnote.
Lucia looked at Renzo. He met her gaze, his expression confirming the truth. The old smuggler knew trouble when it stared him in the face. He had suspected the cube's danger, hoping its story was over when he had left her in the storage unit. The cafe's door chime made them all jump. Lucia looked past Hitchius through the swinging door, now swinging freely. 2 new customers took a seat at the corner booth. One, a bulky ursine being with thick, matted fur and a chest broad as a bulkhead door. The other, a slender arboreal with long limbs and skin like polished hardwood. They set their menus aside with a shared, deliberate gesture. The ursine was Galt, his partner was Kess. They were bounty hunters, and they were blatant about it. Galt's massive frame filled his side of the booth, while Kess draped over theirs.
We'll take the special.
Galt grunted, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the floor plates.
And we hear you have a fixture you might be looking to sell. A unique piece of decor. Solid.
Lucia wiped her hands in her apron, stepping out from behind the kitchen pass. Renzo already moved, his posture casual but his path deliberate, placing him between the booth and the kitchen.
Sorry,
Renzo said, his tone flat.
Nothing's for sale.
Cass unfolded slightly, and they tilted their head.
Oh, I think you'll find the offer compelling. Enough to retire somewhere warm, with fewer zealots on the way.
The threat hung in the air, as clear and greasy as spilled engine coolant. Galt cracked his knuckles, a sound like cracking stone. He settled his gaze on Renzo, and his expression hardened with recognition.
Wait a minute,
Galt grunted, leaning forward.
I know you. Vesper Blockade. You ran supplies for the Separatist. You're Renzo One Way.
Renzo's jaw tightened.
That was a long time ago, kid. Yeah, well,
Galt said, leaning back.
Blockade running is one thing. This artifact?
He gestured vaguely toward the kitchen.
That's a different magnitude of trouble. The kind that gets a station like this lagged. We're just the first wave. Omnicore has a team on the way, and the chorus, well, you saw their welcome party.
He and Cass stood up. Galt looked at Renzo, then at Lucia, a hint of professional respect, or something like it, in his beady eyes.
Our offer stands, he said. When the alternative is vaporization by a fleet of holy rollers, you'll find our price reasonable. We'll be in touch.
They left, the door chiming behind them. The cafe fell quiet. The reality of the predicament settled over the three of them. A world-destroying weapon, a zealous fleet, competing bounty hunters and corporate vultures.
We must contact the Spin Ring Directorate,
Itchius insisted, his tone regaining some of its procedural certainty.
Lodge a formal complaint. Have the proper authorities secure the artifact.
Renzo let out a short, harsh laugh.
Proper authorities. Kid, the director comprises a committee of guild bosses and crime lords. They'll auction the key off to the highest bidder before your complaint finishes processing. We'd be lucky if they just spaced us to keep things quiet.
Then we must flee,
Itchius said, his wrist feathers fluttering.
Take the key and disappear into the outer rim.
And spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders?
Renzo shook his head.
The chorus hunts relentlessly.
Lucia walked back into the kitchen. She picked up Percy. The cube felt immensely dense, a solid, unyielding weight in her hands. She thought of the hovering spoon, the vibrating salt shakers, the thought of her cafe, her home, this small, chaotic galactic pocket that she owned. No, she said, her voice quiet but firm.
She set the cube back down, once again propping open the door. This is my doorstop. It stays where it is.
Hitchius stared at her, aghast. Renzo looked at her, a flicker of pride in his weary eyes. For better or worse, they faced this together. They formed a team. A cook, a retired smuggler, and a panic academic against a fleet of genocidal purifiers. The odds stood against them. One moment the local star gleamed through the station's main viewports. The next, it vanished, eclipsed by a fleet of alien ships. They hung like bone-white sculptures in the dark between systems. At their center was the flagship, the Stillness of Rhyme, a vessel so large it had its own subtle gravity. Station traffic control devolved into a panic symphony of shrieks and warnings. Independent freighters scrambled to change course, their captains cursing in a dozen languages. The spin ring's own meager defense platforms activated, painting the lead ship with targeting lasers that seemed childishly insignificant. On the Stillness of Rhyme's bridge, conductor Prime Ackman stood still. The bridge was a smooth, curved chamber where the air was unnaturally still, carrying a low hum that seemed to vibrate in the teeth. His physical form was a seamless, matte-black substance that absorbed light, defining his form as a stark silhouette against the ship's interior. He perceived data streams directly. The Acolyte's data flowed into his awareness. The key was exposed, currently in use as a service entrance stabilizer. His form remained impassive. The chaos of organic life was predictably inefficient. They would use a sacred instrument of cosmic balance to prop open a door. The report was unsurprising, merely messy. He opened the channel to the spin ring directorate, his voice a layered chord of shaped sonic pulses, a tool for delivering facts. You are the governing body of this construct. We are the cause. We have come to reclaim a relic sacred to our purpose. You know it as the quietest key. You will deliver it to our designated shuttle before the next primary shift change of your central star. Failure to comply will result in our direct retrieval. We are here to bring stillness. Our purpose is not a negotiation. The channel closed. The message was complete. To Ackman, this was a statement of established fact. The chaos on the spin ring would find resolution. The key would be his, and then his holy work could continue. The Perihelion Cafe closed for the first time in 3 years. The lights dimmed, the close sign glowing forlornly in the window inside. The team was having a brainstorming session which mostly consisted of frantic pacing. Hitchius did the pacing.
The Stillness of Rhyme is a Rhyme-class world vessel. Its primary energy projector has a theoretical yield sufficient to crack this station in half. Their fleet consists of 12 escort frigates, each capable of deploying a cloud of self-replicating biomechanical drones. Procedurally, our survival probability is negligible.
Renzo sat at a table, methodically disassembling and cleaning his blaster pistol. The pieces lay on a clean rag in perfect order. He sat with a stillness that was more unnerving than any of his usual bluster.
So, fighting them is out. Good to know.
Lucia was stress-wiping the already spotless stainless steel counters. The familiar repetitive motion was the only thing keeping her thoughts in order. We can't run. We can't fight. We can't sell it to God because the course would just take it from him. And we certainly can't give it to the Directorate. She stopped wiping, leaning on the counter. So, what options remain?
Hiding it,
Hitchius suggested, his pacing unabated.
The station is a labyrinth of forgotten service tunnels and shielded cargo bays. We could conceal it.
Every scanner from here to the core system is looking for the energy signature right now,
Renzo countered, keeping his gaze fixed on his work.
They'll find it in an hour. Sooner if Omnicore gets their deep-range sensors online.
They fell into a frustrated silence. The cafe's refrigerators hummed, the only sound. As the tension in the room mounted, a stack of ceramic plates on a high shelf vibrated. They rattled against each other, then The top plate lifted 2 inches into the air, hovering. Hitchius stopped pacing. He pointed with a feathered digit at the floating dish, his neck plumes ruffled into a spiky corona.
Look! The key! It's reacting to our heightened emotional state. Our biological signatures are overloading the key's sampling systems, causing localized graviton distortions.
Lucia stared at the floating plate, her mind, accustomed to the relentless logic of supply chains and order fulfillment, connected dots. The spin ring operated on rules, unwritten, often broken, but rules nonetheless. Hospitality was a binding principle. Neutral ground was sacred. Galt and Cass made an offer instead of starting a firefight. Omnicorps would send a corporate liaison instead of a squad of Marines. Even Ekman, a genocidal zealot, had opened a channel and stated his terms before shooting. They were all, in their own way, customers. They all wanted the same thing off her menu. An idea sparked, a wild, audacious notion born from years of dealing with unruly patrons and demanding orders. "We treat them like customers," she said. Renzo and Hitchius both turned to look at her. "We host a parley," she continued, the idea taking shape, her kitchen logic imposing order on the chaos. "Right here, we invite everyone who wants the key, the bounty hunters, Omnicorps, or even Akmon. We put them all at the same table." Hitchius looked at her as if she had just proposed they try to reason with a supernova. "That is categorically insane. You want to invite a collection of murderers, corporate spies, and a messianic swarm consciousness to dinner?"
People with full bellies are more inclined to talk than to shoot.
Renzo murmured, a slow, dangerous smile touching his lips. He looked at Lucia, a newfound respect in his eyes.
Kid, you're a romantic. A deeply unhinged, pragmatic romantic. But it's the best bad idea we got.
Lucia felt a surge of purpose. This was just another meal service, the biggest, most dangerous meal service of her life. The mise en place for the apocalypse was about to begin. The preparations moved with the frantic, focused energy of a kitchen prepping for a state dinner. Lucia's mind for logistics, honed by years of triage, found a problem bigger than a burnt souffle. "The guest list is the first order of business," she declared, tapping a stylus on a data slate. Renzo grunted, already deep in the station's shadow networks. He used contacts so old they were practically fossils, sending out encrypted feelers to Galt and Kess, and to a corporate liaison from the xenotech conglomerate Omnicorps by reputation. The message was simple: a neutral ground meeting to discuss the contested asset. First come, first served. Hitchius, meanwhile, had the task of inviting the apocalypse. He composed a formal message on Serenian diplomatic channels. He framed the invitation as a procedural hearing concerning disputed artifact provenance, held on neutral territory as per Spin Ring Accord 9 Gamma. The query was a masterpiece of bureaucratic obfuscation. "He'll refuse," Hitchius muttered, transmitting the message. "His doctrine views such rituals as a symptom of chaotic inefficiency." Moments later, a reply came. A single sonic pulse with layered frequencies vibrated through the cafe's comms unit. Hitchius listened, cocking his head, his crest feathers smoothing out in sheer bafflement. "He accepted," he whispered, dumbfounded. He replayed the layered tones, deciphering the sub-frequencies. "By the sacred archives, he intends to observe. His acolyte reported the key's environmental contamination. He's coming to study the chaotic biology anomaly firsthand. To him, we are a petri dish. He wants a closer look at the bacteria before he sterilizes the slide." "Good," Lucia said, her focus on her data slate. "That gives us an edge. Now, the menu." This was her true battlefield. For Galt, the Ursine hunter, she planned a rich, high-temperature stew. Ursines had a slow metabolism that became even more sluggish when processing heat-dense foods. It would make him lethargic, less prone to sudden violence. From the Omnicorps suit, a Sessian named Vela
Renzo's intel suggested her species had a low tolerance for a specific aerolized compound from a Vatervonen flower, a rare vial he had stashed away. It acted as a mild disinhibitor, loosening her corporate discretion. And for Akmon, that was Hitchius's contribution. Digging deep into a restricted anthropological database, he found the course's method of energy consumption. They absorbed energy directly from isotopic solutions. Lucia designed one for him, a calibrated, nutrient-rich isotopic solution, served at the exact temperature of his flagship's internal environment. She had made respect her opening gambit. They worked through the station's night cycle, transforming the cozy cafe. They rearranged the tables into a single large U-shape, formal and imposing. They adjusted the lighting and silenced the music. At the main table's center, on a clean linen cloth, they placed the quietest key. The key was now a centerpiece, an object of negotiation. Lucia stood back, surveying their work. The air rang clean, the steel gleamed, the glasses shone. Her kitchen was ready. She set her dining room. She cordially invited the apocalypse to dinner. The guests arrived on time, their arrival spaced by minutes as if choreographed by an unseen hand. Galt arrived first, his massive frame filling the doorway. He moved with the predator's rolling gait and scanned the room, his eyes lingering on the key. Cass was a shadow at his side. They took their seats without a word. Next came Vela, the Omnicorps representative. She was a Sessian. Her form was a vortex of contained opalescent gas that swirled within a transparent pressure suit. Features coalesced and dissolved in the vapor, her gaze sharpening for a moment from the missteps. She offered a crisp, professional nod from her helmet and sat opposite Galt. Conductor Prime Akmon entered last. He flowed into the room, his two acolyte guards taking up positions by the door. His matte black form seemed to absorb light, leaving only a silhouette. A chill entered the room. He moved to his designated seat, a perfect liquid silence. Lucia emerged from the kitchen, wearing a fresh starched apron. She moved with the calm authority of a head chef, hiding the terrified woman she was inside. Renzo stood beside the bar, a silent, brooding statue. Hitchius hovered near the kitchen door, clutching his wristpad like a holy text. "Welcome to the Perihelion Cafe," Lucia said, her voice even. "We're glad you could make it." She served the first course herself. She placed the steaming bowl of stew before Galt, its rich aroma filling the air. She set a small, pressurized vial next to Vela's suit, which released a fine, sweet mist. And she presented a simple, glowing beaker of isotopic fluid to Akmon. The attendees were wary. Galt sniffed the stew before taking a large, greedy bite. A low rumble of satisfaction escaped him. Vela's suit vents whirred as she sampled the aerosol, and the swirling gases within her helmet seemed to move a fraction slower. Akmon extended a featureless digit and touched the beaker's surface. The fluid's glow dimmed as he absorbed its energy. "Let's get to it." Vela's synthesized voice buzzed from her suit. The aerosol was working. Omnicorp's position is clear. The artifact represents a paradigm shift in biotechnology. It must be studied in a secure corporate facility. Our offer for exclusive acquisition is substantial. Our offer is simpler. Galt rumbled, his speech already slightly slurred by the warm food. We deliver it to our client for payment. Who that client is doesn't matter. We get the rook, you all walk away. Lucia let the silence sit for a moment before she spoke. "You're all missing the point," she said as she swept her gaze across the table. "You're talking about who gets to own the key. But he," she nodded toward Akmon, "is the only one here who actually intends to use it." She let that sink in. "An active biosphere killer is bad for business," she continued, framing her argument in the only language they all understood, self-interest. It destabilizes markets, it disrupts shipping lanes, it makes it hard to collect on a bounty when the entire planet you're hunting on has been rendered into gray sludge. It's bad for the spin ring, and it's bad for every one of you at this table. Vala's gaseous form eddied thoughtfully. Galt stopped chewing, a piece of gristle halfway to his mouth. She held their focus. Ekman finished absorbing his energy solution. The beaker was empty. He stood, his smooth form unfolding to its full, intimidating height.
Your interests are the chaos,
he intoned, his layered voice filling the room.
Your markets, your contracts, your petty squabbles over ownership, they are symptoms of the disease we have come to cure. This ritual is pointless.
He turned and flowed toward the door, his acolytes falling into step behind him. He paused at the threshold.
The stillness is coming.
He departed, leaving a profound and chilling emptiness behind him. The parley had failed. Or maybe it hadn't. Galt and Vala looked at each other across the table. They were rivals, predators from different ecosystems, but Akmon's cold, absolute conviction had put them on the same side of the board.
The deal's changed,
Galt grunted, pushing the empty bowl away. Vala's form swirled in agreement. Indeed, Conductor Prime Akmon represents an unacceptable market externality. We are prepared to offer a temporary alliance, for a price, of course. A fragile pact formed in the parley's ruins. It was something, a start. The lights flickered, once, twice, then died. The cafe plunged into darkness, punctuated only by the red glow of the emergency power strips kicking in. A low, groaning alarm blared from the station's hub, a sound no one wanted to hear.
What was that?
Hitchius squawked, his silhouette a frantic bundle of feathers in the dim light. Then the floor tilted. The station's rotation was decaying. The artificial gravity plate sputtered, trying to compensate, but the spin ring's massive inertia was winning. Loose cutlery slid off tables. Renzo and Lucia grabbed the bar's edge to keep their footing. The floor settled at a sharp, unnerving 15-degree angle. Ekman's voice echoed through the station's emergency broadcast system. The voice was his layered sonic vibration, stripped of all warmth. A voice of cold logic.
Your primary conduits have been disabled. We are imposing order on your chaotic system. Full station functions will be restored when the key is delivered to our shuttle at docking claw 12. You have 1 hour.
The message ended, leaving only the sound of the alarms and the distant groan of stressed metal.
He bypassed the parley.
Renzo snarled, pulling himself up tight.
Went straight for the throat.
Our new allies are useless. Bella spoke from her booth, her synthesized voice cracking. The ships are trapped in docking clamps, same as everyone else. They were trapped. The station was crippled. Akmon had taken the board and flipped it over. A direct fight was suicide. Hiding was no longer an option. Hitchius, in a fit of academic frustration, slammed his wristpad against the Canton bar.
It's the dogma. It's their own blasted weakness. Their entire philosophy's riddled with purity precepts, obsessive-compulsive doctrines about sterility and procedural integrity. It's a flaw in their core programming. An obsession with cleanliness is, procedurally speaking, a direct invitation for inspection.
He froze. The others stared at him. Lucia looked at Hitchius, then at Renzo. A new idea, even crazier than the last one, formed in her mind. The idea was audacious and profoundly stupid. It might just work. An inspection, she repeated. Renzo, how good are you at forgery? The next hour was a blur of high-stakes improvisation. Hitchius, complaining bitterly about the myriad ethical and procedural violations he was committing, dove into the spin ring's municipal archives. He used his high-level academic access to create impeccable digital credentials for a newly fabricated regulatory body, the Spin Ring Gastronomic and Hygienic Oversight Committee. "This will ruin my reputation," he muttered as he fabricated work orders and inspection mandates. "My monograph will be a laughingstock. Write a new one," Lucia said, her focus on the small kit she was assembling on the bar. "Call it Guerrilla Bureaucracy, a practical guide." Renzo, meanwhile, called in the single biggest favor he had left in the galaxy. He calmed Galt. The price was steep. His own souped-up off-the-books courier ship, the Scrap Rat, and every credit in his private account. In return, Galt provided two things. The first was Renzo's primary request, a recently acquired Corps military comms encryption key. Galt's crew were vultures, the only ones on the station who profited from stripping wrecks of chorus drones after border skirmishes. If anyone had a back door, they did. The second was a promise to create a distraction at the station's central security hub in 45 minutes. Lucia packed her inspection kit. It contained a set of sterile sample vials, a multispectrum light scanner, and a small pressurized container of a highly concentrated non-toxic organic compound. The compound was a synthesized flavoring agent she used in trace amounts for one of her more exotic dishes. Its primary ingredients were allicin and capsaicin, concentrated to an industrial degree. They gathered by the cafe's back door, the new roles rehearsed. Hitchius was the pompous, overbearing lead inspector. Lucia was his stoic apprentice. Renzo would be their pilot and comm support, flying them over on the ship he had just bartered from Galt. "Ready, Inspector?" Renzo asked, a grim smile on his face. Hitchius adjusted the newly forged ID badge on his harness, his neck plumes ruffled tight against his skin. "Procedurally, I am obligated to inform you both that this is the single most idiotic plan in the history of sentient thought." "Heard," Lucia said. "Let's go." Renzo piloted the borrowed ship with a smuggler's intuition. The stillness of rime loomed in their viewport, a silent, pearlescent mountain in the void. As they approached, a hell signal pulsed from the Chorus flagship. This was the moment of truth. Hitchius took a deep, shuddering breath and activated their comms using the stolen encryption key. He'd broadcast their forged credentials in a single command, his voice dripping with bureaucratic condescension. "Spin Ring Gastronomic and Hygienic Oversight Committee, invoking Purity Precept 9, subsection Theta, unscheduled containment audit. Acknowledge." A pause followed. On the other end, a Chorus bridge officer, a being whose entire existence predicated on following doctrine, faced an inviolable rule. Purity Precept 9 was foundational. An unscheduled audit, while regular, had to be honored. To refuse would be a theological crisis. The sonic pulse that came back was laced with the sub-frequencies of procedural obligation. "Acknowledged, you are cleared for approach to docking Ring C. An escort will meet you." Renzo let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding.
I'll be damned. It worked.
Hitchius' posture straightened. It was, of course, the only logical course of action. An acolyte met them at the airlock. The acolyte was as silent and featureless as the one from the cafe. It gestured for them to follow, leading them into the ship's interior. The corridors were smooth, curved, and pristine. The air was still and cold, tasting of sterilized polymers. It felt less like a ship and more like the inside of a laboratory instrument. Hitchius, fully in character, put on a magnificent show. He ran one of his prehensile feathers over a bulkhead and made a soft, disapproving clucking sound. He paused to peer at a light fixture, shaking his head. Their escort led them to the galley. The galley was an isotopic refinery, a vast, silent chamber of glowing conduits and humming containment fields. "Adequate," Hitchius pronounced, his tone suggesting it was anything but. "Procedurally adequate, perhaps, but spiritually barren. I'll need to see the waste reclamation manifest for the last 3 shifts. All of them.
As the acolyte turned to access the data port, its attention diverted by the sheer volume of Hitch's bureaucratic demand, Lucia went to work. Moving to the main isotopic dispenser, she pretended to run a scan. With a swift movement, she unsealed the canister from her kit and attached it to a small intake valve, emptying its contents into the main reservoir. She also attached a small device to the control panel, a simple repeater that would trigger cascading error messages in the system in 5 minutes. Meanwhile, Hitch's wrist pad, disguised as an atmospheric sensor, was sweeping the area. It picked up a faint, familiar energy signature. The key. He casually pointed a feathered digit toward the ceiling.
The ventilation systems in this sector appear to be underperforming. My apprentice will need to inspect the primary ducts. 2 decks up, I believe.
The acolyte, already buried in manifest, gave a sonic pulse of assent. The deviation was minor, acceptable. The ruse had worked. They slipped away from their escort, moving through the silent alien ship. The scanner on Hitch's wrist pad guided them, the signal growing stronger with every corridor they passed. The ship was a maze of curved, seamless walls, and Lucia felt a growing sense of claustrophobia. The signal led them to a large circular door that rose open at their approach. They stepped inside. The room was vast, empty, and perfectly spherical. The walls glowed with a soft internal light. In the chamber's exact center, the quietest key floated inside a shimmering containment field. And standing before it, his back to them, was Conductor Prime Akmon. He turned, his featureless faceplate fixing on them. His posture remained calm, expectant. He turned as if he had been waiting.
Chaos follows predictable patterns.
He spoke, his voice echoing in the chamber.
A desperate gambit at infiltration based on a flawed interpretation to our doctrine. I anticipated this contingency.
2 more chorus guards flowed from the alcoves in the walls, blocking the exit. They were trapped. Akmon approached the key, his hand like appendage reaching for the console that controlled the containment field. He was preparing to prime it, to begin the process of attuning it to the spin ring's own biosphere.
Your interference ends now, he intoned. The time for stillness has come.
Just as his digit was about to touch the console, a soft, insistent alarm chimed through the ship's internal systems. A moment later, a frantic series of sonic pulses came from Akmon's personal comlink. The signal was from the acolyte from the galley.
Conductor Prime, I report total system contamination, the primary energy supply, a volatile organic compound of unknown origin. We have
Pause followed.
We have a catastrophic failure in the isotopic refinery. The entire ship is saturated with a volatile organic compound. Signature analysis indicates high concentrations of allicin.
For the first time since they had met him, the collective consciousness of the Conductor Prime Akmon registered a single, overwhelming sensation. Confusion. His confusion was the only opening she needed. While Akmon's attention was on the alarm, she moved. She moved toward the key. She pulled a ruggedized industrial data slate, the kind used for managing shipping manifest, and a thick, heavy-duty data cable from her inspection kit.
Hitches, I need a power source, now!
The Serenian, snapping out of his terror, saw what she was doing. He pointed to a systems conduit running along the wall's base.
There! A primary power junction!
Lucia slammed a heavy magnetic clamp from the cable's end onto the key's dark surface. It clung on, a spark of energy arcing between them. She jammed the other end of the cable into the conduit port Hitchius had indicated. She was uploading to it.
What are you doing?
Akmon spoke, his voice resonating, the confusion warring with anger.
The first rule of the kitchen,
Lucia said, her fingers a blur across the data slate.
Know your ingredients.
She wasn't uploading a virus. She was uploading data. The entire atmospheric and waste reclamation archive from the Perihelion Cafe, which Renzo had downloaded and sent to her data slate before they left. Years of data, every species that had ever eaten there, every spilled drink, every airborne microbe,
every shed skin cell and feather particle, the complete, chaotic, messy biological signature of her home. The quietest key, a weapon designed to analyze a single dominant biosphere and target it for annihilation, shuddered in its containment field. A billion conflicting data points flooded its system. The key tried to find a single enemy in a sea of symbiotic life. The second rule, Lucia grunted, opening a second data stream. Understand your supply chain. She dumped the cafe's inventory and supply chain logs into the buffer. A sprawling, complex record of thousands of ingredients from hundreds of worlds. Fungi from Yggdrasil 4 that could only grow on the bark of silicon-based trees. Grains from Tau Ceti that required 3 different symbiotic bacteria to germinate. Meats and vegetables and spices, a testament to interstellar cooperation for the simple, profound purpose of a good meal. Ekman finally realized what was happening. He lunged for the console, his guards moving to intercept her. They were too late. The key's internal systems were screaming. The key's programming, designed to find a single protein sequence, crashed against a dataset that defined life not as a single note, but as a symphony. Its targeting logic was crashing. The feedback from the raw energy she was channeling made her head pound, and the warm, salt taste of blood touched her lip. Her voice was steady as she stated the final rule. A tool's purpose is what you make it, she said, looking directly at Ekman. A knife can be a weapon, or it can be a tool to prepare a meal for 1,000 people. A heavy block of metal can destroy a world, she gave him a grim smile, or it can hold a door open for your friends. The key emitted a single low hum that vibrated through the entire chamber, and then it went silent. The containment field collapsed. The microscopically etched channels on its surface, which had once shifted and flowed like liquid, locked into a fixed, impossibly complex pattern. Its energy signature vanished. It received a new directive, burned into its core programming from the sheer volume of data, to preserve the most complex, interdependent system it had ever analyzed. It had learned the logic of a working kitchen. Ekman stared at the now inert cube. He stared, his crusade fractured by an idea that defied his core programming.
That's our cue. Renzo's voice crackled over their comms. I'm at the docking bay and the engines are hot. Whatever you did, you got the whole ship in a tizzy.
Lucia grabbed the now inert key. Its physical mass hadn't changed, but its oppressive weight was gone. It was just a block of metal now. Hitchius, shaking off his academic awe, grabbed her arm.
Lucia is correct. A strategic withdrawal is procedurally advised.
The course guards stood in disarray, their link to their conductor prime's absolute certainty momentarily severed. Ekman was still staring at the key, his perfect, orderly world in ruins. That hesitation was the only opening they needed. They ran. The flagship's corridors were no longer silent. Alarms blared, hatches slammed shut. The ship was in lockdown, its automated systems trying to contain the containment that was still circulating through its vents, making the entire vessel smell faintly of a trattoria. They made it back to the docking bay just as a swarm of station security vessels, alerted by Vela as part of her deal, surrounded the course flagship. Renzo had the shuttle's ramp down, its engines screaming.
Get in!
He roared. Lucia and Hitchius scrambled aboard, Lucia still lugging the key. Renzo didn't wait for the ramp to fully close. He slammed the thrusters, yanking the shuttle through a tight maneuver that threw them against the bulkhead. The shuttle shot out of the bay just as massive force fields engaged, sealing it shut. They had escaped, leaving the course fleet leaderless and in chaos. Its flagship grappling with its fractured purpose and a pungent odor. They returned to the Perihelion Cafe to find power and gravity were returning. The place was a mess, everything slanted and scattered. Galt and Vela were waiting for them, standing amidst the debris. The course fleet is in disarray, Vela announced, her professional tone firmly back in place. The command structure has fractured. They are withdrawing from the system.
You got lucky.
Galt grunted, though a grudging respect showed in his eyes.
The Directorate wants to see you. All of you. Now.
The Spin Ring Directorate Chamber was an opulent, intimidating room filled with the most powerful guild heads and syndicates. They sat at a raised semicircular table, looking down on Lucia, Renzo, and Hitchius like judges. Lucia, exhausted and still wiping dried blood from her lip, stepped forward. She placed the inert key on the floor between her and them. She spoke in clear, direct terms, explaining what had happened. She told them about the parley, the infiltration, and the reprogramming. She made it sound like a job. When she finished, she made her proposal. "The key isn't a weapon anymore," she said. "It's just a symbol. A symbol of what this station is supposed to be about. Different people, different species, coming together. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's chaotic, but it works." She pointed at the key. "So here's the deal. We integrate it into the threshold of my cafe, a neutral space. Everyone who enters the Spin Ring's newest diplomatic hub will have to step over it. A reminder of the choice we made. Cooperation over destruction." The Directorate members murmured amongst themselves. They were pragmatic beings. Lucia's proposal offered immense political and symbolic power. A line cook had faced down a purifier fleet and won. The story was good for tourism. More importantly, they now controlled the Quietus Key's story. The head of the Mercantile Guild, a ponderous mollusk-like being, slammed the gavel.
So agreed. The Perhelion Cafe is hereby declared a protected political sanctuary, and you, Lucia Marigold, are named its official steward, the Threshold Guardian.
Lucia stared. She had wanted only to run a kitchen, and now she held the station's peace in her hands. Weeks later, the Perihelion Cafe was open for business. The cafe was busier than ever, the tables filled with a mix of dock workers and high-level diplomats. Spies from rival corporations sat at a bar, nursing drinks and pretending to ignore the bounty hunters in the next booth cutting a deal. The front door, now fully repaired, was a work of art. The inert Quietus Key was embedded in its threshold, flush with the floor, its intricate locked pattern gleaming under the lights. Every person who entered had to step over it. Renzo stood behind the bar, grumbling with a rare contentment as he poured drinks.
Place is a madhouse. Can't keep the Vatervonen wine in stock.
Dr. Hitchius occupied his usual corner table, now piled high with datapads. He had appointed himself the cafe's archivist in residence, and was no longer writing about myths. He was documenting a living legend, his new monograph, tentatively titled Gastronomic Pacification, a Case Study in Applied Chaos Theory. In the kitchen, Lucia was in her element. The Dinner Rushes Symphony, her favorite music.
"Order up. Table 3 and 1 diplomatic platter hold the assassination attempt. On the grill, 2 protein gruels for the security detail. Heard."
A dignitary in flowing robes poked his head into the kitchen pass-through.
Excuse me. I was hoping for a word with the esteemed Threshold Guardian.
Lucia kept her focus on the pan. She worked, the sizzle of alien protein, a familiar, comforting sound. She was exactly where she belonged. "Tell him I'm busy," she said, her voice calm and steady amidst the glorious chaos. "This food has got to get to table 9 hot." The dignitary retreated. The kitchen door swung shut behind him. Its motion stopped, as always, by a dense, important block of metal that had once been a world ender, but was now a doorstop.